Hello to the Week Playing Public, I'm Noel, and I made day 2 in the NAGC, so might as well do a deck profile. Playing Pure Invoked, as the title will say, and I don't feel like beating around the bush today because I just got back from Minneapolis. I'm very tired. I might not edit this very much. Start off with the main deck and our Aleisters. 3 Reminiscent, 2 Invocation, 3 Meltdown to get Old Aleister, 3 Iwas to get both Aleisters, and 3 Spirit Swords to get Iwas. Your best starts, of course, are going to be with access to both Aleisters, but you don't necessarily want to max out on Old Aleister because he doesn't do much on his own in Genesys. Of course, in the TCG, he does a lot more because of the existence of Link monsters, but in Genesys, there's actually not a ton that you can do with just an Aleister. If you're going second, it's a lot better, because Invocation can, of course, use cards in the opponent's graveyard, but going first, you're going to be relegated to using whatever hand traps you happen to draw. Speaking of Invocation, we are on 2 of each. Because both Invocations are able to recycle themselves, Invocation by targeting an Aleister in the Banishment and shuffling itself back to add that Aleister back to hand, and Invocation Sword by targeting either an Invocation or Aleister monster in your graveyard, shuffling it back and adding that target to hand, there's not much need for a third copy. Occasionally you will get hit by a DD Crow, but it's very rare that that DD Crow will ever target the Invocation Sword, although it might target the Invocation. Generally, it will hit whatever you're targeting with the Invocation Sword, usually Aleister. The sword will usually still get shuffled back. And of course, that effective Invocation Sword is very important for your combos, especially the 1 cards or 2 cards, with an Invocation Sword plus New Aleister or Gamma Summon plus New Aleister to end on enough attributes for a 3 material Aeon. Speaking of our engine requirements, we have Viracom, which on summon sets an invocation or spell that mentions it, usually Invocation Sword, to use on the opponent's turn, although you will occasionally use this as an extender to grab an old invocation and Gamma Summon, which usually you'll only search if you already have an Invocation Sword in hand, or Viracom, but occasionally you might grab because your matchup is a little weird and Aeon doesn't really do much, but a Mechaba might. Our only, this is a weird spot. I'm not sure what to call this because this isn't a sub-engine and it's not non-engine either. We're just on 3 King of the Swamp and a Poly because King of the Swamp can be treated as original Aleister, both in the hand, field, and graveyard. I suppose it's 3 places, so not both. And Poly is an extra fusion spell, which can matter under a lot of circumstances, since Invocation Sword is once per turn, although Invocation itself is not. It is still nice to have another push occasionally. And playing King of the Swamp legitimizes another play that I'll show you later on. As for non-engine, we're on 3 Effect Veiler. I'm playing this over Fualos because it's better into Blitzclick, and it's also just able to prevent plays rather than discouraging them. You know, if I Fualos a Fairy Tail player, they're probably still going to end on Teller, but if I Veiler Wiccat, they're not. 3 Ghost Ogre, also good into Blitzclick, good into Fairy Tail, good into a lot of decks in the format. Sacred Beast as well, being able to hit out Thunderclap or the field spell, or even Martyr, is good. And the non-engine that I'm not so proud of is DD Crow. This still has some application into Blitzclick, some application into Sacred Beast, but it's not as good as I hoped it would be. Very often, this would just be dead in my hand, and it's not even a particularly useful attribute, unlike Ghost Spell, which also didn't perform very well, but is at least a better attribute because you can make Bay Baron with it. Of course, Veiler and Ogre you can make both Bay Baron and Mechaba with. We're also on 3 Kumungus. I'm main decking Kaijus because during the process of building, I was convinced to play some Lancias in my side, and that forced me to cut Chalice from my main. So I just moved the Kumunguses to the main deck, and they did help quite a bit. It was a very helpful, very impactful side, or a very impactful card very often, and occasionally I would just use it as fusion material, and to Pair Bear to not lose the minigame. There was very little Pair Bear at the event, and I kind of wish I hadn't played it, but there were a couple rounds where my opponent activated it, and you're never catching me lacking on Pair Bear, let me tell you. We'll go on to the side deck, which is a little unusual, but I want to show this off. We're on Paradox Fusion, which is just Solemn Judgment by banishing a fusion monster you control, which can occasionally trigger Gamma Summon to resummon whatever you banished if you haven't used its effect. That can also, of course, resummon Elysium after you've used its effect and reset its soft once per turn effect. And, you know, more text on the card. It returns to your field after your second standby phase after activating Paradox Fusion. You're never getting to that second standby phase. Either you win the game by then or you lose the game by then. 3 Artifact Lancia. I was convinced to play these to beat the Mirror. Also has some application against Blitzclick. Unfortunately, I just never drew these, but I also never played against another Invoked. That's not true. I didn't play against another Invoked pilot in the NAGC. I did in a couple side events. We are on 3 Heavy Poly because Heavy Poly for Aeon is just such a devastating breaker, especially when paired with a copy of Magical Meltdown. Lost the card name for a second. I ended up doing that in the Attack of the Giant card on Sunday against Team Sam. He definitely misplayed because he was on Sacred Beast, could have activated the Sacred Beast trap after I had activated Magical Meltdown to summon out the Uriah from grave and then use the Uriah to blow up the Magical Meltdown, which would then allow him to use the Veiler that he had in hand against my Aeon after I Heavy Poly'd, but he didn't know I had Heavy Poly. Probably still should have done that play, but he didn't end up doing it. And it definitely cost him that game. We are also on 3 Twin Twisters, just because we need the backer removal. We kind of struggle with that. The only other backer removal is Aeon and Foolish Return, which I never used. This card is only here because it's the consistent way to beat the hero FTK with Cosmo Neos, and I never hit that FTK. I really wish it was Forbidden Dress. Maybe I wouldn't have lost some of my matches against Blitzclick if it had been. Maybe, who knows. Moving on to the extra deck, these are sorted in order of importance. Sorath is always going to be your banish off of new Aleister. Bay Baron is always going to be what you summon off of Invocation Sword after resolving new Aleister. Elysium is always going to be, at least you always wanted to be part of your end board. Chorozo is something you do. It is something you do to ensure 3 attributes for your hyper invoked Aeon by using Invocation Sword to grab the Aleister back from grave, and then using the Aleister effect targeting Bay Baron to summon itself. Give the Bay Baron 1,000, now you have a Spellcaster and a Fusion, send those to grave for Chorozo, and then the Bay Baron you will either, hopefully, banish for you will either hopefully banish the Bay Baron for an Invoked Aleister or for Gamma Summon. Then there's Hyper Invoked Aeon, of course, a very important card. You always want to be making this at least once if you can. Well, I'm only on the one, but you always want to make this on your opponent's turn for the powerful board wipe effect. When paired with Elysium, it's incredibly hard to push through because you essentially have 2 board wipes and one of them gets to rip 3 from your opponent's extra deck as a bonus. Occasionally, the extra deck rip can just end the game if you're able to hit out something important like a... Nothing's coming to mind right now. Let's say you're playing... Let's say Red Dragon Archfiend. You know, you're playing against RDA, you hit out, like, Red Rising, RDA, Crimson King. That's devastating. That just ends the game right there. Next up we have Mechaba. You will usually be summoning this off Gamma Summon. You very rarely hard make this because your only light in Grave is Sorath, and you always want to be using Sorath to summon Elysium. Instead, when you open a hand that consists of both Aleisters, you're usually going to be summoning Aleister as part of your end board. Although you could summon Invoked Genesys Omega instead. If this doesn't have an effect on your opponent's turn, this does. I bought a Starlight of this for $25 from a vendor. I don't know why I did that. I barely summoned this. But occasionally it's a banish for new Aleister because you don't need it. Then we have a couple of the older fusions. Raijin. Okay, Okeanos is here too. This is the only thing you can do with a dark monster. So it's here. I did summon this relatively often, but it's not, like, good in Genesys. It's not even that good in TCG, or in Advanced, although the Floodgate effect can matter. It doesn't matter as much as you would really hope, because it's a dim fizz versus a macro. Anyways, we have some of the older ones. Raijin is just the best of the old ones. Cactus is, in theory, a good thing to summon against Blitzclick, but it's very hard to make because you don't have waters in your deck. There aren't even really water hand traps. You could try to spring for Gamseals instead of Kumunguses, but that's some points that you don't necessarily need to be spending. And Purgatrio, which I thought was going to be more impactful than it was. I don't think I ever summoned this, or at least when I did, I don't recall using it. No, I did use this. I did summon this. It was useful. Just not as useful as I would have wanted it to be. And here's my secret little trick. Millennium Eyes Restrict. Of course, you can summon this off of a poly or an invocation using material in hand with King of the Swamp. But the secret is in that this is a 0 attack monster, meaning you can always add 1 to your heavy poly. Twice over the weekend, I resolved heavy poly for 4, once against Team Sam in Genesys Giant card, and once against Vanquish Soul, and I only took 56 damage. In theory, you could, using this, resolve it for 5 and leave yourself at exactly 100 by banishing Millenniumized Purgatrio, Cactus, Raijin, and Sorath. I never ended up banishing the Purgatrio. This was my lineup for whenever I would heavy poly for 4. And again, heavy poly is an incredible breaker when you're summoning Hyper Invoked Aeon. Being able to do... It's shocking the difference that 4 banishes is versus 3. 4 banishes very often means you just get to take, like, something that doesn't even necessarily do anything, but means you get to swing for more damage, which is what I ended up doing against Team Sam, was banishing his back row, which was the trap, the field spell, and then 2 of the martyrs, leaving him with a Kaiju and an attack position Martyr, and I just summoned new Aleister, giving Aeon 1000 attack, grabbing sword, and went to the battle phase. Swing over the Kaiju with Aeon for 24, swing for 18, swing for 1000, still in the battle phase, summon Elysium, swing for game. Then we have Mixusa and the best Mixusa target, Dragostapelia. I did summon Mixusa, but I was never able to summon Dragostapelia. Is that even true? I'm not sure that's true. I feel like at some point I summoned Dragostapelia. A lot of the early games kind of blend together for me. But, you know, that's really all I got for you. I guess I could show a combo or two, but realistically, this deck isn't actually that difficult. You can figure it out. Just kidding. I'm going to show a combo. This might take a little bit because my deck isn't sorted the way I would really want it to be. So we're going to normal Aleister, effect, grab Invocation. Then we're going to use the new Aleister, target, summon, grab Invocation Sword, banishing Sorath for cost. We'll activate Invocation Sword, fusing regular Aleister with Sorath. This is important. It's actually not as important as you would think. I'm just lying. It doesn't actually matter which Aleister you use at this point, because whatever the other one is, you're just going to be sending off for... You're gonna be sending the other one for Churrozo. Bay Baron effect on summon. Grabbing ourselves Viracom. Special summon the Viracom. Effect, set the other Invocation Sword from deck. Then use these two to summon Magistus Churrozo. Activate Sorath. Banish these two to summon Invoked Elysium. Then activate Invocation, banish Aleister and Bay Baron to summon Invoked Aguades. Again, this is a point that you could summon Invoked Magistus Omega. The thing is, Invoked Magistus Omega doesn't do anything. Then you can just use Invocation to grab the Aleister back to hand, use Invocation Sword to grab the Aleister back to hand, and not only do you have a pretty decent board with a pop, a board wipe, Aeon for 3 with protection on the Aeon activation from Viracom, but follow-up, which is something that a decent number of decks in the format kind of lack. If you deal with if you deal with a Sacred Beast board in a way that involves banishing either a Martyr or a Thunderclap, that's a huge blow to them, because now they can't use the effect to summon 2 from deck or place 2 from deck or graveyard. Both of them can place from graveyard, but they can't from banishment. It can be debilitating to get hit by that kind of thing. Invoked has an incredible grind game. Unfortunately, it can also be kind of bricky, despite the number of starters. You know, you'd think with all these starters you wouldn't brick as often as I did, but occasionally you'll just open Invocation with no Aleisters, you'll open Paradox Fusion with no Aleisters, or you'll just open Poly with no Aleisters. Still, I'm proud of my performance in the NAGC. I think Pure Invoked is genuinely probably one of the better ways to go with Invoked, if not the best way, just because you're able to spend your points on non-engine. And I do thank you so much for watching. Pass turn.